very, very slow. So somewhere in the middle between ohm and GOM is a sweet spot where you can actually biologically compost this material and create what is called BioComplete, biodynamic, bio-intensive compost. And that's really where the sweet spot is between taking dirt and converting it to soil. Because along with that BioComplete compost is the complete soil food web network. So that's fungi, that's protozoa, that's all different types of bacteria. So it performs this amazing function called nutrient cycling.
Okay, so we're Facebook Live now. And so if you can start again.
Okay.
We have Leighton Morrison, who's been doing some amazing work along with, in conjunction with Leighton and a whole cast of world-renowned experts on the soil food web, how we interact with microbes around us. And so he's developed aquatic microorganisms that are really fantastic for kind of filling in the gaps where the indigenous microbes that are taken from terrestrial environments don't do as well. And so, Leighton, take it away.
All right, sir. Sorry for those that had to hear this again. So today we're going to talk about composting. Composting as a process, not as a product. So everybody, I want you to look at someone nearby and understand that they are organic now. Every single living thing, from a single cell bacteria to the biggest creature you can imagine, is organic now. I know it's a little bit different than plants, right? Everyone just thinks, oh, plants, they're organic. But that's not what it is. So, to understand composting as a process, we're going to talk about it in reality, because that sill particularly gets broken down and makes the next plant, which is an incredible process back to zero. But today we're just going to do it about a time. So we start with organic matter, plant material, it can be humans, animals, whatever. And we're going to move into what's called ground organic matter. That is what traditional commercial compost facilities make, is this ground up organic matter. Is GOM good for compost? Or is it a good product to put on the fields or out your orchards? The answer is yes and no. If it's tilled in, it's an amazing source of building up some soil, which has basically been, for the most part, hated in any commercial ag situation. So it also could be used as an herbicide because it will steal nitrogen from the existing soil system. It will kill plants that we put it on. So that's something to really take into consideration when you're using these immature composts. And the way you can tell immature or immature compost is the nose. The nose odor. If it smells like ammonia, that means it's still in the composting process and therefore will steal nitrogen from the soil system of your plants. If it smells like forced ammonia, now you know you're on the other end of the spectrum. Down near loam. Loam probably loam is mineral associated. Palms particularly organic matter. GOM is ground up organic matter. So now you can start to see the timeline that's occurring. At the very end of decomposition, you have loam, which is then converted to silt. And then that silt is then returned through biological processes back to the plant. So as you can tell, composting, again, is a process, not a product. So, where does BioComplete Compost come in? BioComplete Compost is when you have a high level of the organisms that we traditionally see in undisturbed soil systems. They are the nutrient cyclers, that's nematodes, protozoa, different types of bacteria from degraders, decomposers, solubilizers. And those are what is critical for pulling and extracting nutrient out of parent material, sandstone clay, and organic matter, and releasing a plant available so that that plant is now uptaking the minerals that we're losing in our food system right now because of conventional agriculture. So how do we get back to that point where we've taken dirt and turned it into soil? that's when the application of BioComplete Compost is tremendously beneficial because it's an instant. Typically, I can turn a dirt ag system into a complete living soil system with 2 applications of BioComplete Compost. That's pretty quick. Traditionally, our organic certification process requires 3 years to get it, and that's with no use of any pesticides. And that's on the assumption that the necromass, the existing organisms that have been depleted, will naturally come back into the system either via transportation through air or water, or naturally occurring in the soil system itself. This is a great example. I recently did a project in Irvine in a parking lot where they had tree boxes. So if anybody knows what those really are built on, is that tree box is built on a compacted surface that's designed to handle truck and car traffic. So basically they leave a hole in the pavement, dig it out a little bit, throw in some dirt, plant a tree. How well do you think the plant's right? It's living on compact soil that's designed to hold vehicles. Irvine hired me to come in and try to save water because they have a water problem. They have more areas that they need water in, and they want to cut that back because of the restrictions that were in place prior to last winter. So they called me in, I made them a BioComplete compost. I taught them how to pull back the sandsill clay and expose the feeder roots and allow roots. Then I had them install the BioComplete compost, put the irrigation back in place, the drip, and then cover it with chips, coarse mulch. Out of the gate, we saved 50% water as of the first day. As I told them, if you do not cut this back, you will kill these trees, and you will turn this into anaerobic ponds. So they listened to me, and they reduced the water by 50% the very first day. Within 1 month, we did another soil microscopy test to determine if we were going in the right direction. Turned out we were growing ciliates. Ciliates are live in anaerobic environments, so again, we had too much water storage capacity in that system, and to cut it back to 65%. That's significant. More importantly, after another month and a half, we did another soil test, which again verified that we were now back in the sweet spot and not going in the anaerobic direction. We got earthworms in a parking lot. And I'm not just talking 1 or 2, I'm talking hundreds of earthworms in each one of these treatments. How'd that happen? That's called necromass. Necromass is the existing organisms that are locked up in the soil system in what's called in-cyst form. In other words, they can survive for periods of time when the pH of the water isn't in balance. To a degree that on the International Space Station, they took biofilm and smeared on the outside of the space station, came back 3 years later, swabbed it, microscoped it, and found that the bacteria were still living. That's how hardcore these organisms are. And they're present. They're present in the air, they're present in the years on the planet. That's a blink of an eye. It's back. So these types of things happen naturally over the course of time. We can't wait for it to happen. So how do we convert this? How do we turn that dirt back into soil? This is primarily the main way to do it. There are a tremendous amount of other ways. Crowd herding, using manures, other types of OM, organic matter, that are not detrimental to the soil system. So I guess the key to understanding now how to make BioComplete compost is done through diversity and not high temperature. Compost Council of America requires that you cook compost at least 131 degrees for a minimum of 30 to 90 days, depending on what state you're in, and that's to kill the pathogens. But what that also does is it kills all the biology. So again, we're trying to prevent somebody from passing on a pathogen through the use of compost, but in reality, the pathogens are actually a food source for the good guys. And it's only when we kill the good guys that the pathogens get out of control. So it's really important to understand that if you're trying to make BioComplete compost, you have two choices. If you go the organic standards and the commercial compost council's suggestions, you got to kill it all first, and then wait a year, if not two, for those organisms, that necromass, to come back in and take over. It's a lot of time to have a huge pile of compost sitting on your property. If you got plenty of property, no worries, right? But if you're agriman and you're on a small postage stamp and you're moving millions of yards through there, you don't have the time to allow this to happen. Worse yet, they don't have the ability to separate the greens and browns. Why does that matter? Well, green means nitrogen, brown means carbon. The right ratio of carbon to nitrogen is 66% browns, 33% greens. If you want to use a high nitrogen source like a manure or spent manure substitute on grains, we try to tell you to stick within 10% max. And that's so your pile doesn't go hyperthermally, which in turn can combust, literally. It starts producing alcohol and then spontaneously combust, and now you got an environmental disaster. You're releasing smoke, you got to use water to put it out. Where's all that going? Not where you want it, in that pile. So that's problematic. So in my work, I've learned to do low temp compost, and that way I don't kill all the organisms, and I don't worry about the spread of pathogens because I'm using diversity in my favor. What do I mean by diversity? So when I make a BioComplete compost, I collect every single type of green and brown I can find around. The theory behind that is there's organisms called endophytic biology. Endophytes live inside the plant, and they work for the plant. So they actually, the plant cell will allow this bacteria to come in contact with it. It'll basically excrete an organic acid and melt the outer shell, the outer cell wall of the bacteria in this case, and allow that bacteria to come into between its inner and outer wall. Something to drink, thank you.
Yeah.
So, in the low temp composting system, we are actually releasing those endophytes into our composting system. Why is that important? Because again, they're a huge part of the nutrient system. There are also fungi that live inside that. And when that fungi, say that it's living in a leaf, when that leaf dies and falls to the ground, that endophyte now becomes a saprophytic fungi. So it's now continuing to break down organic material in situ in the soil and releasing that as organic acids to create what are called microaggregates. Aggregates are when soil comes together and creates a particle. Why is that important? Well, the more aggregation you have in an undisturbed soil system, the more the water penetrates and gets stored in each one of those aggregates. Think of them as little sponges. So now you're storing your water, you're not running it off, you're not eroding your soils. More importantly, you're creating these microenvironments where, think of them as cities, all different types of biology work together in unison. And probably the most important is that you're getting great gas exchange. So you're allowing oxygen to penetrate down in the soil system to support this advanced biological system that we've created. And you're also allowing the CO2 to come out and feed the plant. Wow. That's a complete loop. What was God thinking, right? I mean, it works great until we disturb it. As soon as we put a plow to it or drive a truck over it, we've changed that. We've crushed those aggregates and we've compacted the soil. And now it's not going to function the way it should. It's not going to allow the water in. It's not going to let the gas exchange out. So again, how do we reverse that? BioComplete Compost will reverse that process. How does it work? Well, it's actually kind of simple. Clay platelets look like little flying saucers, right? When they're in functioning soil system, you'll have one flat, one standing up, and then a little flat on top. Kind of looks like a little ivy, right? More importantly, it creates a niche for bacteria to set up and create biofilm and start mining that clay platelets. So now it's even stable, it's not going to tip over. This is how you start to decompact soils, is with the use of these microorganisms. Once they're in play, guess what? That system is a lot more stable. If you walk on it, you're not going to compact it. Have any of you forest bathed, where you walk through the forest with bare feet? Try to breathe in the air, meditate perhaps. Well, you ever notice how you feel your feet sink in a little bit? But if you look back, there's no footprints. There's your microbes, there's your microbiology. They're doing their job, they're preventing that compaction. The same thing is true of any soil. Sorry about that. Any healthy, what we call aggregated soil system will have the resistance to prevent that collapse. And if it does crush slightly, well, it's got the strength to pull it back out again. Maybe it takes a longer time than the forest, but it will work. So let's talk about the different styles of composting. I'm sure you've all seen the cylinders, Johnson Soup bioreactors, the use of compost in tubes, or manure in tubes, to prevent that from getting hyperthermal filter. That's one method. You've all seen windrows, long piles that are piled, if you go to a commercial facility, very high, about 20 feet high, 30, 40 feet wide at the bottom. The problem with that system is you have to take into consideration what's called thermodynamics. So what thermodynamics does in a giant pile is you get the core in the center gets super hot. It's 160, 180, no problem. Well, what that core does is it pushes away water because it doesn't want it. It's doing its thing. So you're watering at the top of this windrow. The water is running down the sides. It's not penetrating the core. Worse yet, it's accumulating at the bottom and going anaerobic. And that's why when you turn these compost piles that are huge, you get knocked out with the smell of methane and ammonia. The ammonia is from the thermophilic process. The methane is coming from anaerobic digestion, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, and food waste. How do we deal with our food waste? Anaerobic digestion has been the go-to method because it does reduce these things down. Unfortunately, what comes out of anaerobic digestion is methane gas, which we don't really need any more of. And the solids that come out of it are stinky, hardcore carbon sources, so not beneficial for a true living soil system. For dirt, sure, no problem. Put it on till then. Don't put that stuff on your organic garden because you're going to have problems. It's going to kill stuff. So now you start to understand that traditional commercial composting is actually more detrimental to the environment than it is beneficial because they're releasing methane gas. We all talk about CO2. CO2 is the gas of life. Methane, now you can't breathe methane and live. That's not going to work too well for you. And the same with ammonia in an anionic form, in a gaseous form. It's not healthy for you to breathe that stuff. And you talk about adding to potential global warming, those two gases are far more of a problem than CO2. So as you can see, these two methods, anaerobic digestion and commercial composting, are not the right approach. Brian, you want to say something?
Yeah. So when we look at the greenhouse gases, that CO2 is about 5% of the effect, the greenhouse warming effect. But water is 40 to 60% of the greenhouse gas warming potential, whatever you call it. So when you take care of the soil, when it rains, God willing, it's going to rain again, the water infiltrates and it's available to grow plants and such. And so when you have a hydrated landscape, it's cooler, and it the plants that are growing there then, the water transpires from their stoma, the breathing holes of their leaves, and goes up in the atmosphere, along with Arabacter orogenies, bacteria that's dynamite for nucleating 1 million molecules of water to form a droplet of water. So you reestablish the small water cycles. And so this is one of the, taking care of the soil is one of the primary things we can do as individuals. We can take care of any kind of land around us so that water infiltrates into the soil and is able to grow plants. So this is really significant in understanding what we've been developing and realizing in the last couple of years here, the consequence of water as a greenhouse gas and the power of taking care of the soil, healthy soil practices to reestablish those small water cycles and get us back onto more of an even keel as far as climate change. And if you don't believe in climate change, let's just focus on the rain.
And he brings up a very valid point. In nature, only a desert has bare soil. So what does bare soil do? Well, it heats up, and that creates convection. So the farmers that are leaving their fields tilled but have a cover crop are actually heating up and causing a vortex column of hot air going straight up. Well, guess what that does? That pushes the clouds away, right? So as Ron's talking about water cycles, one of the most important things we can do moving forward is to prevent bare soil, because bare soil erodes and it's not functioning. There's more carbon that can be sequestered in the biology, in the necromass, than is comprehensible. So again, the spotlight is on the wrong thing, and that's why it's important to understand how valuable composting can be and how detrimental it can be. So I'm presently working with another company called Ecosphere Science. I highly suggest you guys write that down or search it. Mo created aerobic digestion. Didn't think it was possible. Tried to poke holes in it. Brought him on a podcast. Tried to poke holes in it. Couldn't. I've been working with them now since November, almost a year. And we just got test results back yesterday from Biomakers, who's doing DNA work to try to better understand what's going on in this digestion process. We're making organic acids, gibberellic acid, acetic acid. These are the building blocks that fold proteins on an atomic level to make plant reaction occur. So this is plant hormones on steroids. Again, this information is brand new, but we have been sussing it out over the course of the last 10 months. And this will all be released onto their website so you can start to understand the power of this machine. This machine can be set up locally at a 2.5 ton day digestion of food waste. And it doesn't matter if it's organic or not. This machine kills E. coli. It destroys glyphosate. I'll say that again. It destroys and breaks down glyphosate back to its original molecules, rendering it harmless. It will digest a 5-gallon bucket every 3 minutes, can be fed in, and in 1 hour that is turned into this biological inoculant, because it is. It has flagellates, it has amoeba, it has bacteria in it, it also has nematodes in it. It is a natural form of organic fertilizer, has a low NPK. More importantly, it has ionized versions of all of the micro and macronutrients that plants need. So that means it's plant available. It does not have to go through the biological process of being broken down by bacteria and then eaten by protozoa to release it in the rhizosphere. Very powerful stuff.
What was the name of that?
Ecosphere Sciences. Just like it sounded. Ecosphere is one word in sciences.com. We beta tested this at Peach Hill Soils, and that's where we started building enough material that we could actually start deep diving on the testing. They are presently located up in Santa Cruz at a facility where they're going to be starting up again to start producing more food waste for further testing. But if Ventura County could be convinced to set one up here, people could bring their food waste, respond and leave with a bucket of this incredibly powerful stuff that can be diluted as much as 20 to 1 water. And that's a game changer. And that's a reality that we can, as individuals, take and make a huge leap forward in this problem. Because now all of that product output that you're going to use, you're inoculating the soil as well as feeding the plants. It's a double win-win. So these are the kinds of things that we need to start understanding about composting and the processes and the methodologies to doing it. So back to methodologies. So we've talked about the giant windrow, how it's creating all these negative side effects. We've talked about anaerobic digesters and again their negative effects. Now let's talk about Johnson's reactors, or what I call bioreactors, because anybody can do this at home, and it's not complicated. All you do is you create this cage, which Ron will show you how to do because he's got a bunch of them. And you basically take any organic material you can find, leaf litter, branches, sticks. Aggregate compost can go in there. You can actually start to make that compost good again. I would not recommend food waste unless you're going to go over 131 in this bioreactor, because then you could potentially spread pathogens if you're not careful and use too much food. So again, you go browns 66%, greens 33%, put it in this basket, add water, measure the temperature. Just stick your hand in there. It's getting nice and warm, you'll know. Generally speaking, if you hit 120 degrees, you begin to lose diversity of the soil food web organisms that we're looking to get. So go figure that the Compost Council says you have to go over 131, when in reality, if you're being responsible and using local resources, you do not have to do that. And you will get a better compost quicker. This method, you basically begin to start harvesting this compost in as little as 30 days. And it will be viable. And now you just eliminated all that green waste going to aggregate to get ground up to create more greenhouse gases. And you did it at home. And then when you're done with that compost, you can take it, pull back your chips, spread it around the root zone of your plants, cover that up with chips. You just fertilize it for a year. How hard is that? So now you tell your fertilizer company, no. No more glyphosate, no more NPK on my property. I'll handle it from here. And it gets even easier. You can then take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it half full of your compost, get a paint mixer and a cordless drill, put water in there and liquefy it. Now, why is that good? Well, because guess what? Liquid sinks into the soil. The compost sits on the top. So if you just throw good compost on the surface, you're going to lose 50% of your organisms to what's called oxidation, exposure to oxygen, and you're going to lose a lot of them due to UV, because they don't belong on the surface soil. They belong underneath it. So that's why you have to cover them with chips, or you're losing a tremendous amount of it. If you liquefy it, now it's sinking down into the soil right away. So it by far is the best delivery method for biology into dirt or soil. Couple of tricks. Now, let's get to the next level. My foundational work was done originally looking at aquaculture byproducts, waste products. Bottom line is, when working with these aquaculture companies, I knew from a childhood experience that if I took my fish filter off my little 10-gallon tropical tank and I squished it and cleaned it into a cup of water and I poured it on my mom's houseplants, okay? So I knew there was something to aquatic microorganisms, or fish manure, whatever you want to call it. In reality, fish really don't make manure because as soon as they excrete, it goes into solution, it goes right into the water, so it's not something that you can tangibly put your hands on. How do I get it? Good question. So we screen it and we settle it through radial separators that allow the particulate to fall out of solution and the clean water to go back to the fish, called recirculating aquaculture. Now we have that suspended solids in a solid form that can then be utilized. One of the things that I think we as humans forget, Prior to the great human expansion, we had mass migrations. Well, what does that mean? Well, all those animals crashing through those streams, rivers, brooks, going out into the ocean and coming back up on the land were delivering aquatic microorganisms to the soil. Like, they got wet in their hair. Well, there's a clump of hair, that's a clump of biofilm. That wildebeest is running across the Great Meadows and bumps into each other. But guess what? They just released that biofilm into the soil system. Think about birds. Birds used to darken the sky. Talk about an amazing delivery system. They're in the water, they're out, they're pooping, they're doing all these things that are putting all of those organisms back up onto the land. Now you understand the value of fish manure. There's a company called fishbrew.com. They are licensed in California. You can buy this product in as small as a quart or as big as 250-gallon tofu. So if you've got fields or you've got residents, please go to their website. Again, fishbrew.com. I believe it's the Rise and Thrive that has been registered here in California. And it's relatively inexpensive. And again, it can be diluted to, I think it's 10 to 1. Incidentally, a 5-gallon bucket of compost extract will treat an acre of land. That's a lot. And again, you can dilute it depending on your delivery method, whether it's a watering can or a spray rig. Doesn't matter. One of the things to take into consideration, if you are going to mechanically apply it, you really want to have a diaphragm pump. Diaphragm pump does not create cavitation through centrifugal force, which can kill the vast majority of these sensitive little organisms. But a diaphragm pump is like a heart-lung machine. It pushes the water out. So there is no cavitation or centrifugal force to harm the organisms. A little bit more complicated to find these diaphragm pumps, but Ranger has them, and they can be little 12-volt ones you can clip into your tractor, or they can be gas-powered. So if you're really depending on how much area you want to apply, use common sense and purchase something that's suitable for your needs. So now you understand the value of aquatic microorganisms. You understand the value of the soil food web. More importantly, let's get into nutrition. I know there's going to be some talks about food here. The biggest problem that we have in our traditional food production system is that we're not mineralizing the valuable nutrients that are in the soil locked up because we don't have the right solubilizing and degrading bacteria because we killed them with all of our use of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Guess what's in fish brew? Potassium solubilizers, phosphate solubilizers, the complete nitrogen cycling system. Aquatic fungi, protozoa, nematodes, you name it, is in this stuff. And they have on their website Mr. DNA test showing you this incredible variety of organisms that are present in that product. So if you combine that with BioComplete Compost, guess what you got? Rocket fuel. That's what I blend bird castings, fish brew, compost, and I actually put it into a washing machine. A washing machine that I've converted to be a biological stripper. It has 2 cycles. Agitate, spin. And they're manual, the switches. So I can agitate for as long as I want, and I can spin for as long as I want to extract as much of it out of it as I can. Then I take that and I put it into a pump, a diaphragm pump, add water. I can handle 20 acres a day with my small little box truck. Again, anybody can do this if you have the right understanding of the value of those 3 ingredients. Your little bioreactor, BioComplete Compost, aquatic microorganisms from fish brew, worm castings are available now in peat soils. And those combination has an amazing effect. Plant reaction within 30 days, sometimes within 24 hours, depending on the plant. And the plant's metabolic processing. Sorry. So, back to composting methodologies. You've learned about the negative ones, you've learned about the positive ones. There's also what's called a static pile. If you have a corner of your property that you don't need or it's behind some bushes and you want to utilize it, this is a great technique. For any of you that are not familiar with hugelculture Aquaculture was created by the nomads in Scandinavia millennials ago. Basically what it was they migrated to one place in the winter and one place in the summer. And they didn't want to drag all their food with them. So they would take logs, rotten, clunky logs, and pile them on the surface of the soil. They would blend in a little bit of soil, and they would plant it. And the reason they used the logs was because the logs had tremendous water storage capacity. So even if it didn't rain, they didn't have to worry that these plants were not going to have the necessary resources that they needed to grow during the next 6 months. So back in my early work, I would take rotten log, one rotten log, lay it on the ground, I'd take fresh green branches off any trees, and again, fresh green ones, little ones. The reason you want the little ones is because guess what? They have the plant hormones. And then you lay them back and forth like a teepee. So stick end up once, stick end down, the cool air underneath, and off-gassing that heat out of the top. So once I have my little teepee, now I build my compost. Traditionally, I'll lay down a bed of hay because I don't want my little particulate to fall down in there and collapse that cavity too soon. So I'll put a nice 3-4 inch layer of hay over the whole thing, and mix my greens and browns, dump it on the top, add fish brew, so I guarantee the thing touches off. And I will wrap the outside. You want them fully functional when you apply them. That's how you're going to get the quick green up with the plant reactions. So here again, a couple more techniques for composting. So how do we bridge the gap between these giant commercial facilities and what we really, well, this is another trick. Like I said, you can build a bioreactor at home. You can now get 1 or 2 free yards of compost from that as being members of this community or this town, this county. So now we take that unstable, immature compost, and you put some of that in layers with your greens and browns that you brought from or collected from your home. Now you got more mass. You got more compost to work with. If every citizen of Ventura County went and got their 1 or 2 yards of compost from Agriman, you reduce the potential of all of those nasty greenhouse gases from continuously being released. So you turn something that was very little value into something that's very high value. Now, just so you understand the market right now, BioComplete, biodynamic, biointensive composts are selling for upwards of $1,000 a yard. I'll say it again, $1,000 a yard. Right? That's just ridiculous, right? But what's happening is the people that understand the value of this stuff are willing to pay that much to get it. Right? So you can at home make yourself easily a yard of BioComplete compost using Agriman's, fish brew, your own local plants, greens and browns that you've collected, and you get it for pennies on the dollar. Again, these are all great ways to start pushing the needle once and for all. I mean, you take that compost that you made at home and you grow your vegetables in there, now you're getting back into what we originally started talking about. How do we get minerals back into the food? Worked with a farmer, Illinois, 2 years ago, called me crushed. The war in Ukraine has driven the price of NPK through the roof, and he was scared that he could only afford 1 application, which means that he would not have enough to push the corn all the way to fruition, because they need the second application. He and I have been talking for a year or 2. I said, Kyle, sounds like it's time for you to jump off the cliff. I can't get you my product for 200 acres in less than a month if I can even accomplish that. You need this stuff on the ground in 2 weeks because you're planting. Call my buddy Keith at Fish Brew. Get 10 totes sent out here. We'll do 1 application to get you through the hump. But I guarantee you that you have more nutrients locked up in organic form. Organic phosphorus is incredibly hard to break down. As a matter of fact, without solubilizing bacteria, you can't release them. And we don't have phosphate solubilizing bacteria in our damaged soil system. Again, fish resolves that. I told them, you're going to release a tremendous amount of nutrients that you already have bound in your soils. you're going to be fine. One application of fish food, 10% increase in yield. We send it off for nutrition. The title energy means the energy the animal needs to consume to produce the food that it gets out of it. In other words, the digestion process. Guess what? Energy is way down. Minerals way up. Magnesium, all of the critical vitamins that we do not get in organic form went through the roof in this. And the water weight went down. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you feed a cow corn that's high in water, they're not getting the nutritional benefit that they need. So the less water that's in the corn means that the less that corn has to be fed to the farm, to the cow. So the farmer can now reduce the amount of feed to that cow and get the same results by 15%. Again, very significant when you're farming. These are big needles that we're pushing. So how did that happen? Well, that's, again, the nutrient cycling system.
You might wrap up in about 5 minutes.
Okay. The nutrient cycling system is that the bacteria set up on the sand, silt, clay, and organic matter. They mine these nutrients in ionic form, and then a protozoa comes and eats that bacteria and releases all those nutrients in plant available form in the rhizosphere. Rooting, the rhizosphere is coated around the root. The more roots you have, the more rhizosphere you have, the more nutrient cycle you have, the better uptake of all of these things that we're so desperately in need of. I mean, this country is like, food system is horrifying. You know, we have people that are literally starving that are obese because they're not getting the nutrition that they actually need. So we can do this at home, and you can get the seeds here that you know are clean, and there's no reason why you can't set up a little box or bed out in the backyard and at least pop in some carrots and some, lettuces, and maybe even have a fruit tree and feed it with this stuff, and guess how sweet your fruit's going to be. I got pictures of melons that were so rich in color because of being exposed to biologicals. And as he said, it's sweeter than any other melon that I've grown, just by doing these simple little practices. So I think I should probably wrap up. If there's any questions, we got a couple minutes left. Please.
Quick question about, you were talking about very early on about herbine and the plants that you put the compost on and then you put top mulch on. Every time I've done that personally, where I put the top mulch on and I've used bark, I've created a horrific ant situation. Is there a workaround to that?
So, do you like ants or termites better?
Neither.
You wipe out the ants, you're going to get a lot of termites. So, again, we try to work with nature, all right? So, the reason you're getting those ants is because there's something there that they want. So, what is it that they want? Was that a food waste compost? Was there food residues in that compost? What was the reason they came? There's some reason. It could be water. Because remember, compost holds water like a sponge. Talked about
It's
that.
for the water. My plants are in pots.
Okay.
And their fruit trees in pots.
Okay.
So there's no real place for the ants to go. They can't disperse out into the soil if it is like into the soil.
So fortunately, next talk is on managing ants. So
We thought we missed that, but
not yet.
but is there any work? Do you deal with that when you're dealing with these things?
When I'm making compost here, generally speaking, the ants come in during the process. But then they leave, and they actually are part of this nutrient cycling system on the next level. But again, I know we look at ants as pests, but they're really not. They're just part of nature. And again, trying to work with them is way better than the alternative of killing them. Because you kill them, you open up the door for the termites. So listen to the next one.
And then we have an annex right through this double door here. There's a couple of park benches here, so can continue a conversation out there without disturbing the group here, and in a very pleasant environment.
The cane off the
Can you do the humiculture with freshly cut logs, or does that?
No, you want something open pumpkin. Two reasons. You want the fungi to digest it and more importantly, you want the water storage capacity. If you throw the new ones in there, it will not function the way I'm intending it to.
Yeah, but I mean, would it work if I just wait an extra year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I were you, I'd figure out a way to bury that log in chips. You know, get some mulch from peach hill or agaric, the really coarse stuff. Maybe peach hill, because agaric is just a little aggressive with the way they process the materials. But Rob has very aged chips, and if you bury that log, that chips are going to transfer fungi in there and speed up that decomposition or that turning it into punk that we're looking to do. All right, one more?
Just said thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my God,